about running backs now. All right. At the running back position, my first fade is the RB7, Devin Achane. Devon Achane, however we going to say it, right? Devon Achane. Devon Achane, running back 7. What are we doing now? He is a backup on his own team. I know he had the 51-point game that caught us all by storm. And, he did dirt against the Broncos, 3 straight, 50, 20, 20. Like, I get it. He had a very good start to the season, caught a lot of people off guard. But let's not forget, this is an injury-prone running back. He's small. Dude is small. Tiny. He was hurt before the season started, got hurt again in week 5, re-injured himself later in the year. He was injured 3 times last year. Now, the team signed Jalen Wright, the team drafted Jalen Wright. So now there's additional competition in the backfield. And he's asking to get more involved in the passing game. So we just expecting him to become a better running back all of a sudden? Like, say he's catching passes, that's fine. Get him a few more receptions. But it's not like this guy is just going to be 70-point runs and 70-point catches every single week. That's not how football works. We've got one player ever do that. That was Chris Johnson. He was crazy for one season, CJ2K. But after week 13 last season, Devon Achane averaged 14.6 fantasy points. Oh, what happened to all that fantasy points per game? He's over 20 fantasy points per game, top 3 fantasy points per game. After week 13, when everything settled down, when the season got tighter, he averaged 14.6. So this is a guy now you think should be going in the second round as the RB7? This is a guy you think can carry your fantasy team as your RB1? Are you kidding me? The Dolphins don't even believe that. Raheem Mostert is the starter. So the Dolphins ain't starting him. If we saw in the second half of the year what he really looked like, why are we taking this guy in round 2? I get it, the upside, Jahan. But what about the weeks where he doesn't score 10 fantasy points? What about the weeks where he's inconsistent? We also have to factor that in. We love the good that comes with fantasy. Sometimes we forget about the bad that comes along with players as well. Devon Achane going way too high at RB7. Next up, another player who is going a little higher than I think he should, but he at least earned it last year. Kyren Williams. He was the RB7 in only 12 games last year. He played 12 games and was the RB7. He had an incredible run. Over 1,100 yards rushing, 12 touchdowns. He did it in the receiving game as well. But he was hurt last year twice, right? To start the season, he was a little banged up, and then he got injured in the middle of the year as well. He's already hurt this offseason. And Sean McVay has already come out and said, look, we got to get less touches to Kyren this year. We got to take care of him. The team drafted 3rd-round pick Blake Corum, who is going to be a tank right there behind him. So they're looking to reduce Kyren Williams' workload. And we know how Sean McVay is. He's not a guy that likes to really run a committee. He likes to run one guy. And all the hype this offseason has been about how Blake Corum looks good. Kyren's got to get to training camp. And we're drafting a guy who's kind of smaller, a little bit injury prone, had a great season, reduced workload. We're drafting this guy now as a RB8, and that's where he finished last year in 12 games. I get it. He earned it. Kyren has earned his draft spot, but there's so many question marks that I'm fading him. He would have to replicate something that, we don't see this very often, a late round guy that gets an opportunity and then just kills it. We don't see this very often, and we don't see it last very long typically. So I think Kyren had an amazing season, all-pro year for Kyren Williams. Can we expect him to duplicate that? I think that's asking a lot. Now, if he does it on somebody else's fantasy team, congratulations, man. You won. You killed it. You got him at a good draft spot. But I'm not taking Kyren Williams as the RB8 with all them question marks and a guy that's lurking behind him that could probably vulture a lot of touchdowns as well. Kyren Williams is on my fade list, and it's not for the fact that I think he can't produce at that level. It's just there's so many other concerns with Kyren. I got to take a pass this year. Next up, this guy has climbed the draft boards for whatever reason this offseason. RB26, Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks, 2nd-round draft pick out of Texas for the Carolina Panthers. Coming off of a torn ACL, we're taking this guy as a starting running back. He's an RB3, high-end RB3, back-end RB2, depending on how deep your league is, more of a mid-tier RB3. Now, He's the best runner in the draft, the best back in the draft, but he's coming off of a torn ACL, going to a bad offense in Carolina. This team has a lot to show that they can even move the ball downfield and score touchdowns. One of the worst team in football last year. Chuba Hubbard was the leading back last year. The team already said they believe in him. He came on strong towards the second half of last season. Why would you give a guy a full workload to start the year? Now I get it. Maybe his ACL is feeling better about 8 to 10 weeks in, and they let him become the starter in week 12, 13. That sounds about right for Jonathan Brooks. Slower load to start the season and then finish off strong. But to take that guy at RB26 means you believe he could be a flex option for you right now. That's a 0 RB starter. That's a guy that you truly think is going to be able to help you for a majority of the fantasy season. When we don't even know when he's going to get the opportunity to start, if he does. He's got to be ready for training camp. All indications are that he should, but coming off of an ACL, who knows if that's the case? If he is ready for a training camp, he's still got to earn his role as a number 2 back. Coaches are going to make him do that. I think he will earn that role. How will he produce? Then he's got to overtake Chuba Hubbard in order for this RB26 draft spot to be worth it. Might he be a value down the stretch when fantasy playoffs hit? Cool, but you have to roster this guy all throughout that whole time and not drop him, not get impatient. So at RB26, there's a ton of other really nice running backs that are going around that range. I think you could do much better and get a little bit more upside than Jonathan Brooks, who you're taking right now as kind of a leap of faith. He's going to be ready for the second half of the year when you need him most. All right. At RB18, David Montgomery. He's the RB18 right now. And last year, he had a really good season, caught a lot of us off guard, finishes the RB17, had a really nice start to the season, man. Like at the beginning of the season, he was averaging 20 fantasy points a game for the first 5 weeks. And then he got hurt. And what happened? This team drafted Jahmyr Gibbs early last year. They wanted to use him, and they were holding him back to start the season, made him earn his role. But by the time David Montgomery got healthy and came back, Jahmyr Gibbs had already emerged. He's now a first, second round pick in fantasy football. And after Jahmyr Gibbs earned that workload, we rarely saw David Montgomery play more than 50% of the snaps. I think it was one time he played more than 50% of the snaps. During that time, he averaged 13.6 fantasy points and was very, very touchdown dependent. We're taking this guy now at the RB18, which maybe in hindsight, he should have went there last year. But now that Jahmyr Gibbs is expected to take a bigger role in this offense, expected to be a bigger part of this offense, now we have to acknowledge, all right, David Montgomery, you're the backup running back now. Maybe you're using the red zone, but they're not even using him exclusively in the red zone like they did early in the year. He's going to be limited. He's not going to have the same impact. Unfortunately, I think David Montgomery we're thinking of is the David Montgomery from early in the season and not the player we saw towards the end when Jahmyr Gibbs took over the starting role. Be careful with drafting David Montgomery. That's a player I'm fading at his current ADP of RB18. All right, and then the last player I want to talk about, I've talked about this player a lot, Jaylen Warren. Jaylen Warren at the RB25. So for Jaylen Warren, you know, he played well last year, man. I'm a big Najee Harris guy, so this might seem a little biased to some that are watching the channel. But he finishes the RB22 last year, was really involved in the passing game, had 61 receptions out the backfield. Nice season for Jaylen Warren. But this is a new offense now, a brand new offense. And we got a running back who's lost some weight, inspired in Najee Harris, a power back. And Arthur Smith is running this offense now. And guess what he loves? Power football. He loves to get those power backs involved. We saw it with his time with Tyler Algier in Atlanta. We saw it with Derrick Henry in Tennessee. Loves power football. And do I think Jaylen Warren could be good? Yeah, but to draft him right now amongst the starting running backs, when I think there's better options as starters that are going after him, to me is a little concerning, right? You got guys that could be like game changers in Tajee Spears, potentially Tony Pollard, guys like Zach Moss, Chase Brown. You're getting where you know you're getting at least a starting caliber type player coming out the backfield. So to me, it's tough to draft Jaylen Warren that high. At RB25, I think he should be slotted a little bit lower. I would rather have some other players with higher upside tied to maybe better positions in their offense. outside of a back, he's kind of a pass catching back that you're hoping will get there, right? He doesn't have the same upside as some of the backs that are starters that can get you touchdowns. All his work's going to be in the receiving game. He's kind of more like a Shane Vereen type running back, in my opinion. So, can he do it all? Yeah. Can he be could he reach that spot? Absolutely. But I'm not drafting him at that spot when there's other higher caliber players that are going after him. So, I'm more concerned about the ADP right now with Jaylen Warren. I think he'll probably finish out around the RB3s or 4s. Like, that doesn't sound out of the picture. But to draft him as potentially your RB2 or to draft him and know that you don't have any upside is good enough reason to fade him for me. So I'm out on Jaylen Warren this year as the RB25. If he hits it, I wouldn't be surprised, but I am out. I think that I would draft other players instead. All right, so that does it for running backs. Let me know what you guys thought about the running backs. If you agreed, disagreed, was I off on any?